Do you want to fix toilets, wake up at 2 in the morning with angry phone calls, and cancel all your vacation plans just because of some mean tenant? Me neither. So we're not going to talk about that today. Instead, we're going to talk about how you can invest your money in residential real estate for passive and amazing returns that will blow all other investments out of the water. My name is Brandon, co-host of the world's largest real estate podcast, the BiggerPockets Podcast, as well as the author of the book on rental property investing. And when I'm not writing, making videos, or podcasting, I'm actually invested in real estate. I have currently 45 residential units that provide a great monthly cash flow. And best of all, I manage them less than 2 hours per week. How? Well, that's what I want to talk about briefly today. You know, everybody has a crazy uncle or a brother-in-law who did the real estate thing and has a ton of terrible stories about how bad it is. And in fact, when I first decided to get into real estate investing, my own parents told me I was crazy. They said, you'll go broke, homeless, be living on the street because your tenants will drive you mad. But instead, over the past decade, I've discovered 4 interesting facts about real estate that has helped form my personal investment philosophy. And those 4 things are what I'm going to share with you today. Number 1, there are literally hundreds of ways to invest in real estate. So forget what you've heard. Single family, multifamily, flipping, wholesaling, whatever. There's a ton of ways to make money in real estate. And despite what the late night TV real estate gurus might say, there is no one right way that's best for everyone. However, there might be a great way for you to give you the kind of returns that you're looking for with the time commitment that you want to provide. Number 2, real estate can be more or less passive depending on how you run it. Some investors work 40 hours a week on their investments. Others work 40 hours a decade. And I think that's pretty awesome because it's in your control what you want to do. Number 3, real estate allows you to leverage creativity for cash. You see, with most investments, in order to make money, you have to have money. But with real estate, you can replace the need for cash with something much more valuable: hustle. Now, I'm not saying you should over-leverage yourself or you can get rich quick this way, but understand that you do not need to be rich in order to get rich with real estate. Through creativity, passion, and hard work, you can actually do some pretty amazing things using other people's money. In fact, of the more than $2 million in real estate that I own today, almost all of it was purchased without using my own money. Now, that's not to say you can't use your own cash. You could and maybe should. But the point is, real estate investing gives you options. All right, number 4, real estate investing is sexy. I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time your spouse or one of your friends said, hey, let's sit down and watch Stock Hunters International? No, I mean, people love real estate. I love real estate. It's tangible, it's beautiful, and it's improvable. Plus, it's time tested. People have been becoming millionaires through real estate longer than any other asset class on the face of this earth. So let's wrap up this video as I explain to you what you'll learn in the full-length video that I put together. I'm going to be sharing with you my 3 favorite strategies for investing in real estate and the best ways to get started in all 3 of those. You'll also learn about the mistakes that I made while I was building my portfolio and some of the tips and tricks that I personally use to make sure my time invested is minimal. All right, let's get out of here. All right, my name is Brandon with BiggerPockets, and I will see you later. Hey, what is going on, everyone? My name is Brandon, and today we're going to talk about how to get started with passive real estate investing. And I'm going to talk a lot about what exactly that means. What do I mean by passive? Because in real estate investing, as I'm sure you know, there is a wide scale of passivity, as I like to say. And so things could be more or less passive depending on how you want to run it. But overall, our goal today is to talk about different ways you can invest in real estate using mostly passive methods. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Again, my name is Brandon Turner. We'll talk a little bit more about me in a minute. But first, I just want to say thank you for watching this video. I think you are getting a lot out of it today. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy this. Hopefully you learn some new stuff about real estate. You'll see that real estate is not just the pie in the sky, late night TV guru kind of get rich quick stuff. There are actually a lot of people out there investing in real estate the right way, and they're making a good return from it, and they're making a better return than they can get in a lot of other investments. And so that's what we're talking about today. So I just want to say welcome, and let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about if you're in the right place. I mean, maybe you're not even, you don't even want to watch this video, and so I want to get you guys out the door if that's not what you're into. So let's talk about, are you in the right place? First of all, you might like this webinar, or whatever you want to call this, webinar, video, whatever today. You might like this presentation if you don't want to work your job forever. If you'd rather not work your job forever, if you have an end point in mind and it's sooner rather than later, I hope you're going to get some good stuff out of today's presentation. Secondly, if you want to have an amazing retirement, a lot of people get into real estate not because they want to quit their job now, but maybe 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, they don't want to live on just Social Security. They don't want to live on just Medicare or whatever like the government programs are for them. So if that's you, if you want to have an amazing retirement, hopefully today you'll enjoy this, get some good stuff out of it. And third reason people might like this, and the third reason people get into real estate, investing that is because they want extra income to live an extraordinary life now, right? So, I mean, those are kind of the three main reasons people jump into real estate, is because they want to quit their job, or they want a good retirement, or they want extra cash now. And so there's a lot of ways to do that in real estate. We'll talk about a lot of those a little bit later, but those are what I'm hoping to address in today's presentation. So hang tight. Let's get on with that. In this webinar or presentation or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what we call these things. I don't know. Weird. All right. So what you're going to learn today, you're going to learn my 3 favorite strategies for passive real estate investing. And once again, when I put passive there, I put a little asterisk next to it because, like I said, there are so many ways to invest in real estate. Some are more or less passive. I mean, there's ways that a guy could be working 40 hours a week at real estate, and there's some people that are working 40 hours a decade at their real estate, and it's everywhere in between. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Is I'm going to give you 3 of my favorite strategies for getting started, and I'm going to kind of walk you through what it is, how to get through it, how to get started, some actionable tips of things you can apply today in your life. Keep in mind, I do like to tell everyone this is not easy or fast. Again, I know the real estate niche has a lot of get rich quick guys that are teaching, crappy stuff. But what I'm talking about today is just it's not easy, it's not fast, but it's not complicated or impossible either. I mean, it's just real life stuff that millions of people have done for thousands of years. Maybe not all these strategies, but I mean, real estate investing has been around for as long as there's been people that have bought and sold real estate. And so, again, this is not easy or fast. Don't think this is get rich quick. It's hard work. I love this quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." The reason I bring that up today is because real estate is probably not as easy as a lot of other forms of investing that you've possibly done. It is not as easy as calling up a stockbroker and telling them to buy a couple stocks for you. It's not as easy as calling up your financial advisor and switching your mutual funds around a little bit. Real estate can sometimes take a little more work. Now, again, there are ways to make it easier and less work, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just keep that in mind, that it might take a little more work, a little bit more head knowledge you'll need to learn. And honestly, that's one of the things I love about real estate, is that the more you learn, the more you can make. And so just keep that in mind. Again, that quote from Winston just says that a lot of people are going to look at real estate and say, it's too tough. It's too difficult. I'm quitting. I'm going to go back to what I was doing. I'll go watch Dancing with the Stars or something. But I want to encourage you guys to be the latter there. Be the optimist that sees the opportunity in the difficulty. And so again, this is not too difficult, but I just want to prepare everyone that this is not get rich quick. So let's get on with it. Our agenda today. First of all, we'll spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about me. I won't stay on there long. We'll talk about real estate investing, why invest in real estate. Why should that be an avenue that you want to put your money into? I know there's a lot of options for you to invest your money. Why should real estate be one of them? I'm going to talk about the 4 wealth generators of real estate. Real estate can generate wealth in 4 distinct ways. I'm going to talk about the 4 of those, and we'll talk about some of the different strategies that more or less use those generators. Next, I'm going to talk about my 3 favorite strategies and the first steps for each. So I'll talk about 3 very distinct ways that you can invest in real estate. Specifically today, we're going to talk about rental properties, because I'm not sure a lot of people watching this are going to go out and flip houses or anything fancy like that, because you're looking for more passive returns. But maybe you are going to flip houses, and there's a lot of resources out there as well for that. But we're talking about investing today, not the business side of real estate. So again, I'll talk about my 3 passive, semi-passive, or more so of investing in real estate. And like I said, I'll give you some actionable tips for what you can do today to get started, at least just to walk down that path. And I'll also talk a lot today about the mistakes that I've made in my investing. I'll give you a whole list of them. And, I want to explain those, because here's the truth, right? Mistakes, everybody makes them. And your mom told you when you were a kid, like, learn from your mistakes. And you were like, I don't want to make mistakes. And you were all upset and stuff. But, when you make a mistake, you feel stupid. And that's what people tell you is, well, just learn from your mistake. That is true. And that you should definitely learn from your mistakes. But here's the cool thing about mistakes, is that you can also learn from other people's mistakes.
You understand that? So you don't have to just learn from mistakes. I mean, mistakes suck. So what I'm talking about is you can actually learn from other people's mistakes and not make them in the first place. And that's why I'm so open about the mistakes that I've made, because I don't want you to make the same ones. So we'll talk about that. And then finally, we're going to talk about some different tips and tricks that I've used to minimize the amount of work I put into real estate. So I've condensed down what I used to work 30, 40 hours a week at real estate. Today I'm working less than 5 hours a week at my real estate business, sometimes less than 2 or 1 hour a week. I mean, I don't do a lot of work in terms of managing the stuff that I have going on because I've got systems in place. We'll talk about that as well. A little bit about me. My name is Brandon Turner. That's me there, my handsome mug. And that there is me and my wife, Heather. Heather is the kind of anchor in my life. She's very, very awesome. And she helps me a lot with my real estate investing. I started investing. I started in this game when I was 21 years old. I bought a house and I had no idea what I was doing, but it was cheaper at the time than renting. So I bought this house at 21, had very little income. I mean, I barely made above minimum wage. I had no experience. I had no knowledge. But I jumped in anyway, and everyone said I was stupid and I was going to lose all my money and I was a fool, but I kind of made it work. So over the following few years, I used real estate in order to build up enough cash flow, which is the extra money coming in every month, to quote unquote retire by 27. Now I say quote unquote retire because I wasn't sitting there playing shuffleboard on a beach in Florida with a bunch of old people, right? Like I was still working at my real estate business, trying to improve it and trying to make it better, but I had quit my job. I was done. I had more income coming in than expenses going out. I had more passive income coming in than going out. And so I hit that kind of that freedom number, as I like to call it. My buddy Clayton Morris calls it the freedom number, and I like that. I had that number. I hit that, and it was awesome. And that's what real estate did. And so anyway, today I currently own around 45 units, both single family and multifamily. I'm always buying more. I'm always kind of looking around, seeing what I can find. I'm not a guy that buys a dozen properties a month or anything like that because I'm not looking for the business side of it. I'm just looking to invest the money that I make from my businesses, my other things, and the income I make from sites like BiggerPockets.com, where I write and I do a lot of work for them. I'm the VP there. And I try to invest all of that money and the cash flow that comes in. I try to invest as much of that into new properties. So again, my goal is just to keep investing my money and getting a great return on it, trying to build that up. So hopefully you guys can identify with that. Again, I'm the VP at BiggerPockets.com, the real estate investing social network. We're kind of like Twitter or Facebook or G+, except for instead of cat videos and politics, we're talking about real estate investing and how people can survive that game, because it is a game. It's like a big game of Monopoly sometimes. I'm also the co-host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, which is the world's largest real estate podcast, and been downloaded, I think, 10 million times or something like that. It's crazy. I'm an author of the book on rental property investing, as well as the author or co-author of the book on managing rental properties. I co-wrote that with my wife. Those two books are currently, the book on rental property investing is currently the number 3 real estate book in the country, at least on Amazon, which is kind of fun. It was number 1 for a little while. Anyway, kind of cool. I also wrote the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down, which just talks about creativity when you're investing. And I'm a travel addict. I travel all over the place. I went on a 6-week road trip last year across the country. I went to Ireland. I went to Disneyland. I went to, a lot of places like that. So I really like traveling, and thank you to real estate for making that possible. I mean, I've used real estate to be able to travel a lot because I kind of have that freedom to be able to do that, which is cool. And I'm not a multimillionaire, but real estate has given me both equity and cash flow that has enabled me to live life on my own terms. And so that's why I love real estate. That's why I teach this stuff online, because I'm just so passionate and in love with it. And it's very addicting. I'm going to caution you, real estate's addicting. And so today I want to show you guys how you can kind of do the same, how you're going to be able to invest your income into real estate, whether or not you have a lot of money or a little money. I mean, you could have $5,000 or you could have $500,000, and I'm going to show you guys how you can invest that to start making some returns in real estate. So if you guys are ready, why don't we jump in? First of all, why real estate investing? Why invest in real estate? Well, first of all, these are just things that I love about real estate. And I'm not saying that other avenues for investing are bad or you shouldn't do them. I'm not trying to compare it. I'm just telling you what I love about real estate. Number one, it's tangible. I love that it's there. I can go look at it. I can drive by it. I can knock on it. It's like a physical thing. It's not a thought in someone's head. It's not controlled by a board of directors that are going to drive the price up or down based on what they want, or somebody else is going to do something, I don't know, some CEO is going to go have an affair with somebody and drive the stock. And I love that it's tangible. It's just a thing. It's there. I love that. I love that it's diversification within the asset class. I mean, there are, like I said, hundreds of ways to invest in real estate. In fact, I wrote a post one time called 100 Ways to Invest in Real Estate. You can Google it and you'll find it. And it just talks about everything from house flipping to rental properties to buying apartment complexes to note investing to tax liens to wholesaling to, all sorts of tactics for using real estate to generate wealth. And I love that. And so you're not just relying on one thing. Even if all your eggs were in one basket, like real estate, you don't have to rely on just one asset of real estate. You could be in a little bit of commercial, a little bit of industrial, a little bit of residential, a little bit of high quality, low quality. Like there's a lot of things you can do with real estate. I love that. It's also directly actionable. And I touched on this a minute ago about I'm not relying on a board of directors. Yes, I will fully admit that the market goes like this. It goes up and down and up and down. And I get that. But I love real estate because it's directly actionable, which means I personally can affect the return on my investment. Not just pulling money in and out of a stock or something like that, but I can actually affect the return. What I mean by that is, so I buy a property and then I can fix it up. I can hire a contractor to go and add a new bedroom or to remodel the attic or paint the outside of the house to bring it up to the standard the other properties are in the neighborhood, and I can add value. If the market drops, I can go and find ways to increase the value of that property. I can run it better. I can manage better. I can cut expenses. I can increase income, because real estate's kind of cool because it's combining kind of the business aspect of running a business with the idea of an asset that you can invest in and put your money in. And so it's very forgiving in that way because it's directly actionable. It's also improvable. Like I said, you can go in and fix a property up and make it worth more. This is especially true with commercial real estate investing, and we'll talk about that later, but things like apartment complexes, they're valued based on the income they bring in. So let's say you were to improve the grounds and do new landscaping and raise the rent on every unit by $10 a month on average. That could increase an apartment complex by hundreds of thousands of dollars in value because it's improvable. You can fix it up, you can buy it crappy and then improve on it. And I love that. You can also get great returns with real estate. I mean, let's be honest, we're not investing because we're bored. We invest our money because we want to make more money. And I believe that you can make incredible returns with real estate, especially if you're willing to invest your time into learning how to make that happen. I love that you can get great returns. And what I mean by great returns, how much can you make? I mean, really, the sky's the limit depending on how much work you put in. I mean, it's just like anything, right? The more you put in, the more work you put in, the higher return you can make, but then it becomes less passive, potentially. I would say, I will tell you this, I don't buy anything if I'm getting less than a 12% cash on cash return, which is the immediate return I get on the cash flow. I don't want to buy anything under 12%. So when I look at guys making, I think it was one of my best friends sent me a paper the other day showing he made over the last year, he made 2.4% on all his mutual funds. And I said, that's great. And the market's been great the last year. But he made 2.5% or whatever. And I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, he did things wrong, or he should have moved things around or allocated things differently. But he's not a savvy investor. Either am I. When it comes to that kind of stuff, I don't do it. But I know real estate, and I know how to get a consistent 12% return, if not higher. 15, 20, 25% is not unheard of with some of the things that I do. And so, even if I want to do a lot more work like flipping or fix up a property, I can get 100% or 200% return, and I don't have to do the work. So again, great returns you can get with real estate. There's also numerous options. I said kind of under diversification a little bit, I mentioned that, but there's just so many ways to invest in real estate. It's just crazy like how much you can do. There's so many different options you have for how involved you want to be. So let's move on and talk about the 4 wealth generators of real estate. I mentioned this earlier. There are 4 distinct things that I find help produce a return in real estate. And one of the things I love about real estate is that it's not just one way to make money. If you do it right, you can make money in 4 different ways, and here they are. Number 1, you can generate income through cash flow. Now, cash flow, of course, is the extra income that's left over on the property after every bill has been paid. And I'm talking about every bill. I'm talking about things like, yeah, of course you got to pay the mortgage, potentially, if you have one. Of course, you got to pay things like, the water bill, if you have a water bill, or you got to pay the taxes or the insurance. But there's also things like, what about the roof? I mean, the roof you have to replace every 20 years, and that costs 20 grand. Well, shouldn't you be setting aside money every month for a new roof? Because that's an expense. We call that capital expenditures, or CapEx. So I'm talking about actual, real, after the end of the day, cash flow. The money after everything's been paid out. I love cash flow because what it does is it gave me that freedom number, right? So for me, at the time when I was 27, I needed $3,000 a month to survive, to pay my bills, to be able to quit my job and be done. Now, I know a lot of you are saying $3,000 is, way too little for me, and that's fine. You might have a different freedom number, but for me, I lived in a small town. I had a cheap house, and I could afford to live really well on $3,000 a month. So what I did is I went out and got $3,000 a month in cash flow. And it took me a few years to get there, and I got it, and I quit my job. So that's what I love about cash flow. It gives you that freedom, the flexibility, gives you the monthly reoccurring income, which I love. The second wealth generator I want to talk about today is appreciation. Now, I'm not talking about like I appreciate you, though I do appreciate you for watching this presentation. But I'm talking about appreciation in terms of property values going up, or the value of your real estate investment going up over time. So I bought a property maybe for $80,000, and a couple years later it's worth $100,000. Or I bought a property for $500,000, and a few years later it's worth $900,000. I love that. Now, there's two sides to the appreciation game. There is natural appreciation, and there's forced appreciation. Now, what's the difference? Natural appreciation is what happens because of the market. Now, it's largely driven by things like inflation and a lot of things like supply and demand, things like that. So the market is going up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. And so if you buy it on the bottom and you sell at the top, you got that natural appreciation. Now, I know a lot of you who were, buying property back in 2003, 2004 might say, well, there's nothing natural about what happened there. And that's true. There's definitely some, things that pushed values a lot higher. But overall, it means that I didn't do anything to get that appreciation. It came naturally. The second half of appreciation is forced appreciation. Now, do you remember a few minutes ago where I talked about if you could increase the rent by just a few dollars per month on your units, because the value is based on how much profit it makes on commercial properties, you can force up the value. In other words, you can force appreciation on real estate. Now, there's a couple ways to do that, but typically it involves either making the property nicer. For example, I recently bought a house, and again, don't get confused by the numbers here. When I tell you numbers about a property that I purchased, a lot of you are going to say, oh, that's way too expensive for my area, or other people will say, that's way cheap for my area. Just forget about it. It doesn't matter. The math works no matter what. So don't shut your brain off and say that, well, his area is different than mine. It's not going to apply to me. Everything applies to you. So I bought a property for $70,000, and then a single family house needed a bunch of work. So I went and hired a contractor to put in $30,000 worth of work, and I paid $30,000 to fix this property up. Now I've got a total of $100,000 into it. However, the property is not worth $100,000 at this point. The property just appraised for just under $150,000 because of forced appreciation. Now, in a way, I didn't actually force it. What I did is I brought it up to the level it should be at, but it's the same concept. It was worth this because it was a dump. I made it better, and now I've got a ton of equity in the property. Equity is that spread, that money that I've got, that value. And, someday I'll realize that when I sell it, I'll get that value out, and I'll get to be able to spend that. So again, that's the second wealth generator of real estate, is appreciation. And I love appreciation. It's fun. I would caution you on this. Never buy a property, at least in the beginning, if you're not uber rich. Don't buy a property only hoping for the second appreciation wealth generator. Here's why. Because the market doesn't always appreciate. Am I right? Have you guys been around in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010? We had a severe decline in the market. It dropped significantly. So a lot of people that were trying to buy properties back in 2006 and 2007, they bought them for, let's say, $400,000, and a year later they're worth $200,000. Well, because appreciation can work both ways. Now, typically, over time, real estate has always, over time, gone up. but that's not always the case in a short term. I believe real estate will always generally go up because I believe inflation's always going to go up here in America, at least in the foreseeable future. And so it's always likely as jobs go up, income goes up, rents go higher, everything just kind of increases in value. So again, that's kind of the idea of appreciation and why you probably shouldn't necessarily buy a property just because of it. If you want to do that, you might as well go to Vegas and put all the money on, blackjack, and then you might have just as much of a chance. There are people who do it because over time they realize that over long periods of time, appreciation does tend to go up and will bail them out even of a short-term thing. But those people are generally more wealthy or lucky. Now let's move on to the third wealth generator, and that is the loan paydown, also known as amortization. Now, what that means is your tenant is paying down the mortgage for you. It's like automatic wealth building. And here's an example. Let's just say I bought a property and I paid $100,000 for it. Like I said earlier, I got that property I bought for $70,000, I put $30,000 into it, so then I got $100,000 into it. My mortgage now, I went and got a new loan on the property. My loan is for $100,000. So let's just say, hypothetically, the property was only worth $100,000 when I got done. Let's just say the price never climbed any higher. We never got appreciation, the number 2 wealth generator. It stayed at 100 forever. And let's just say hypothetically that the cash flow was 0 on this property. I never got a penny in cash flow. At the end of every year, it was just always canceled out to 0. And let's say we didn't get number 4, what I'll talk about in a second. We didn't get that wealth generator. All we got was the loan being paid down every year. Well, guess what? If I had a 30-year loan, in 30 years from now, I'm going to have a property worth $100,000 because it's still worth the same level, we're hypothetically saying. But I paid that down. My tenant paid it down every month. So I didn't have to save up $100,000 to buy that property. My tenants basically saved me up $100,000. So again, real estate doesn't operate in a vacuum. Prices do go up and down. We do get cash flow or negative cash flow. Things do happen. But just understand that is a major wealth generator, is the fact that your loan, if you have a loan, gets paid down. Now, if you buy all cash, then you don't get this wealth generator if you're paying all cash. And that's fine. There may be reasons to pay all cash. That's probably a topic for another day, but understand that paying down the loan is a major wealth generator. And number 4, wealth generator of real estate is the tax savings. And there's a lot of tax benefits to investing in real estate because the government loves real estate investors. We're supplying housing to the world or to Americans, and the government wants to incentivize good behavior. And so they incentivize it by giving tax breaks. And what I'm talking about are a few things like this. For example, if you're buying rental properties and you're holding them for at least, I'm not a CPA, so I'm not giving you advice here, but if you hold them for a certain amount of time, like a year, you don't have to pay, and then you were to sell that property later, you don't have to pay self-employment tax on that income, even though you bought and sold a product, just like if I were having an Amazon business, but I'm not self-employed. Same with the cash flow that comes in. On that cash flow, I don't pay self-employment tax on that cash flow. In fact, I'm paying a very low tax rate on all of that stuff because of the tax incentives. Additionally, the cash flow that I do get is typically wiped out. The tax on the cash flow is typically wiped out by something known as depreciation. It's a longer conversation, but typically I don't pay a lot of taxes on the cash flow because of this thing called depreciation. And again, that's a much longer conversation, but the bottom line is this. If you have 2 guys, and I and let's say my friend Bob, and Bob makes $60,000 a year from his job, and I, as an investor, a real estate investor, make $60,000 a year in cash flow. Who gets to keep more money? By far, I get to keep far more money than Bob, who's an employee. Or what about Sherry, who's a business owner? She owns a business and makes $60,000 a year. Who gets to keep more money? Still, I keep far more money. So $60,000 income in real estate is worth almost probably the equivalent of 80, 90, or 100 in one of those other either self-employed or a business owner or an employee. So again, those are the 4 wealth generators. Again, I'll review them. Number 1 was cash flow. 2 was appreciation. Number 3 was loan pay down. And number 4 was tax savings. All right, we got those. Let's move on. I want to talk about my 3 favorite strategies for getting started with real estate investing. Now, these ones, they could be newbies or even advanced people are doing this stuff all the time, but I'm going to keep the cookies on the lower shelf. So if you're new to this, hopefully I'm not going to overwhelm you. So let's get to the 3 favorite strategies. Number 1, let's talk about single family house investing. Just buying single family houses. So what is it? That's probably the easiest one to define, right? Single family house investing is when you buy a single family house, and then you rent it out. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, I don't want to fix toilets. I don't want to get a call in the middle of the night. I don't want to, calm down, simmer down, and we're going to talk about later how to make that more passive. But for now, understand that you can buy single family houses and they can be awesome. So why do I love single family house investing? Why do I buy houses that are single family? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, they're everywhere. There's like 178 million houses in America. They're everywhere. Everybody's got a house. Everybody wants to live in a house, or at least most people do. Most people understand them, which is the number two here benefit. They're easy to understand. People get houses. They're not a complicated thing. People understand them. Number three, they're easy to sell. And I don't mean like easy in terms of like, oh, just, throw it out the window and it's sold. But what I mean is like they're easier than a lot of other investments, the ones that we'll talk about here in a minute. They're probably the easiest to sell. Why? Because there's hundreds of millions of Americans that want to live in a house. And so they're easier to sell than a lot of those things. Now, granted, I will fully say they're not as easy to sell as the stock, right? So to sell a house, it might take you 2 months, 3 months, a month and a half, I don't know, 10 days if you're fast. But if you want to sell a stock, you can do it in 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. So understand that it's not as quick as stocks. I fully accept that. Number four, financing is a little more simple when it comes to single family houses. The financing, and again, one of the things I love about real estate in general is that leverage that you can use. Leverage is being able to get a loan. So again, the financing is fairly straightforward and simple because everybody generally in their life at one point or another will get a mortgage. They get that. You go to the bank, you put down a down payment, you get the property. An investment property like single family house loans are very, very simple, just like your home loan that you got when you bought your house. All right, next one. With single family houses, you can get cash flow and appreciation. I said don't buy a house just based on appreciation, but at least with single family houses, they tend to rise in value better than a lot of other real estate investments. Homeowners that just want to buy a house tend to push those higher and higher and higher. And so single family houses, you do get appreciation, and hopefully anyway, and you also can get cash flow if you buy right. And again, everything I'm saying today, everything we can preface with if you buy right. I'm not telling you just go out and buy a property and you're going to be successful. It's not true at all. In fact, I'd say most properties are just terrible investments in general. You got to find the right ones. All right, next, they can be easy to manage or easier to manage. What I've found in my own investing life is my single family houses are typically a little easier to manage. I found that just the tenants tend to take better care of the properties. And I don't know why that is, but they just have a feeling of ownership. They feel good about that's their property. And so, if there's a mouse in their house, they're not going to call the landlord typically and complain. They're going to go buy a mousetrap and they're going to put it down. It's those kind of things that I just like about single family houses. Also, single family houses are largely improvable, meaning you can fix them up. You can flip them or you can buy a junker and then redo it and then make it look beautiful if you wanted to and increase the value. In fact, like I said earlier, I bought that house for $70, put $30 into it. Now it's worth almost $150. I improved it. So I start the property owning it with $50,000 in equity now. That's great. Right? So if I had to sell, I could sell it even at a discount. I could drop it and sell it for $130 if I had to, sell it, next week because I'm going to do a discount and I still would make money on it. And if it's worth $150, appreciation, meaning that the value goes up every year, which on average it's been around 3% over the past 100 years, just a little bit above inflation, if not equal with it. If it goes up, it's not going up from the point I bought it at 70. It's going up from the 150 mark and higher there. So a few years from now, it might be worth 160 and then maybe 170. And yeah, the market could drop and it could drop down to 130. Well, that'd be sad. Or 120, that'd be sad. But I still only owe 100 on it. And that's why one of the reasons I like single family houses is because they're improvable. You can build that equity from the start if you want to. You don't have to if you want to. And again, tenants tend to take better care of the property. And again, I don't know why that is, but they do. I've just found that time and time again. So that's a little bit why I like single family houses. So what kind of returns can you get on a single family house? Well, I'm going to give you guys an example. But first, understand this. It all depends on the deal you get and the leverage you use. I'm going to say this multiple times in this presentation today. It all depends on the deal that you get and the leverage that you use. We all cool with that? Okay, so now a lot of you might be saying, what do you mean by leverage? I'm talking about the loan. Typically speaking, when you use a loan to buy a property and you put a down payment down, so you're using leverage, you're leveraging a bank loan and putting a small amount of force, a small down payment to apply a big purchase. When you use that, you typically see a higher return on investment. Not always, and there are reasons to buy for cash. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just telling you that typically you see a higher return on investment. But we'll get to that. So what kind of returns can you get? Let's do an example walkthrough here. A single family home that we purchased together, you and I, thank you, for $150,000. And we put down 20%, which was a $30,000 down payment. And we're going to put in about $5,000 in closing costs. There's no rehab on this property. This is just to buy the property, own it. And so total, we've got $35,000 invested in the property. We all tracking on this? Good. All right, so next, the total rent on the property. We're going to rent this property out for, let's say, $2,000 per month. So we rent it out to a nice family who the guy works at the county and the wife is, a teacher at the school. And they're a great family. They just didn't want to buy a house or couldn't afford one right now. They're saving up for a down payment, whatever. They're a great family, renting it for $2,000 a month. And the total expenses on the property come to $1,600 per month, which means that they're spending, we're spending $1,600. Now, what does that mean? That's everything. That's accounting for vacancy and repairs and maintenance and those capital expenditures that you got to set aside money for, the reserves. That's the water bill if you have to pay one. But with single family houses, typically the tenant will pay all the utilities, so we don't have to cover most of those. But it might be taxes, insurance, and of course the mortgage payment. So after all of that said and done, all of that comes to an average of $1,600 per month, which means on average, we're making $400 a month in cash flow every month in our pocket at the end of the day. So $400 times 12, because there's 12 months in a year, figure that. And that's equal to $4,800 a year in cash flow. Again, that's after all of the expenses have been paid, including the ones that are only occasional and that we need to set aside money for. So after everything is said and done, our total profit at the end of the day is $4,800 per year. Well, just using some very, very basic math and return on investment math, $4,800 divided by $35,000 investment, in a very simplistic way of looking at this, is a 13.71% cash on cash return. Now, of course, this is just cash on cash return, which means, remember the 4 wealth generators? This is just the cash flow return. This is not looking at appreciation. This is not looking at tax benefits. This is not looking at loan pay down. If you want to get real fancy, you can get into an IRR, internal rate of return. That's going to factor all of those things in. But we're not going to worry about that, or total return, some people say as well, your total return. But I'm just looking right now at just a cash on cash return of already 13% on this deal. And again, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but it's enough for me to be able to decide if I want to buy a property or not. That's what I look for. As long as you have those income and expenses right, and as long as I can plug those numbers in, I feel pretty good. All right, so that's the number one single family house. How do you get started with that? Well, first of all, these are some action steps for you guys. Number 1, contact a local real estate agent and ask them to set you up with automatic alerts, automatic emails for homes in your area that will match what you're looking for. For example, if you're looking for a house under $185,000, because that's what you want to buy in that area and that's what you can afford and you think is going to rent well, you set up an automatic email alert with your agent and say, hey, send me a link to every single property that comes on the market under $185,000. They can do that for you for free. It takes them about 2 minutes, and there you go. Bada bing, bada boom. You're getting leads in your inbox. Great. Then learn how to properly analyze a deal. And there's a lot of expenses out there that people forget to account for. Things like that. You got to save up for the roof. Make sure you're setting aside some money for things like that. If your roof's going to be bad in 5 years, you better plan on that. And that can get a little bit complicated, but it's not too bad. You can learn this stuff. There's lots of articles out there, lots of books, lots of webinars, videos, whatever that teach this stuff. So again, learn how to properly analyze a deal. I like to recommend, just analyze 1 or 2 a day. Just go and spend some time. If you're interested, we have an analysis calculator on BiggerPockets. You're more than welcome to try that out. If you have a fancy spreadsheet, you can always get those and borrow one, buy one, or make your own if you want to make sure you get everything correct on there, but you can do that as well. You can even do it by hand. In fact, that's what's behind me on this thing here is an analysis of a property. And then finally, speak with a local lender to find out what financing options are available to you. I don't know what the ideal financing for you is going to be. Maybe it's a 30% down payment. Maybe it's 10. Maybe you're going to live in the property, and so it's only 3.5% down. There's a lot of options you have. All right, let's move on and go to small multifamily properties. Small multifamily is the number 2 way that you could get started investing in real estate. So what is it? I'm talking about 2-unit, 3-unit, or 4-unit properties. So small multifamilies are pretty cool because they kind of blend a lot of the benefits of owning larger multifamily properties like apartment complexes with the benefits of owning a small property. So they're kind of cool like that. And I'll talk about that in a second. So why do I love it? Let's talk about it. Number one, less competition. In fact, there's just not as many people looking for a duplex or triplex or fourplex as there are looking for a single family house. So you can really narrow your search and become an expert in that. And it's a little bit less competition for those deals. Potentially there's higher cash flow. If you were, the deal we talked about earlier, you were making $400 on that house, and $400 on a single family house in cash flow is great. However, on a small multifamily, what if you could make $150 per unit per month and you bought a fourplex? Well, now you're looking at $600 a month in cash flow. So overall, those are just you can get better cash flow with small multifamilies. Also, you got several units under one roof, which is really helpful because if, there's the economy of scale thing, right? There's maybe one roof that covers the whole property. So the new $10,000 roof that you got to pay for, there's only one of them, even though you got 4 properties. But you only pay for one roof and maybe one electrical service or one, plumbing system or whatever. There's economies of scale you can save a lot of money on by having everything under one roof. Next, simple financing. And what I mean by that is the financing for a small multifamily, a 2-unit, a 3-unit, or a 4-unit, is identical pretty much to buying a single family house. Most of the banks don't differentiate between a duplex, triplex, fourplex from a single family. It's all residential to them. The numbers are the same to them. So it's fairly simple. Most banks can do it, and you could probably qualify for it. And then finally, it's more scalable. I mean, if your goal was to buy 4 units every year, you could buy 4 single family houses. That would take a lot of paperwork and a lot of work and a lot of searching, or you could buy 1 fourplex. Right? So it's just a little more scalable. You can buy more units at one time. So what kind of returns can you get? Again, it completely depends on the deal you get and the leverage that you use. But let's look at an example of one. A fourplex purchase for $250,000 with a $50,000 down payment, and we'll say $10,000 in closing costs. So in total, we're investing $60,000 in this property. Now, let's say that the total rent for the property of all 4 units, total rent was $6,000 per month. So we're averaging $1,500 a month per unit. Now, total expenses on that property, we could say are $5,400 per month, meaning that we're left with a total cash flow of $600 per month. And so we got $600 per month times 12 is $7,200 per year. And then doing that same simple return on investment calculation, the amount of money invested divided by, or the amount of money that we made in a year divided by the amount invested works out to $7,200 divided by $60,000 is 12% cash on cash return. And so again, 12% cash on cash return, and that's not counting the appreciation, the tax benefits, the loan pay down, all of that's going to help as well. Remember, this is just the cash on cash return. All right. So how do you get started with small multifamilies? Well, it's going to be very similar to what you just saw. Contact a local real estate agent and ask them to set you up with automatic alerts for small multifamilies in your area that match what you're looking for. Next, learn how to properly analyze a multi-unit. There's a lot of expenses that people are forgetting to account for, so make sure you know what those are. And then speak with a local lender to find out what financing options are available for you. All right, number 3, apartment complexes. So what is it? It's any property that's residential over 4 units, so 5 and up. I own a 24-unit apartment complex right now that I really love. I love having that thing, and it's a great investment. Now, they're obviously a little more expensive, but let's talk about why I love it. Number 1, far less competition. There's not a lot of people out there that can go buy an apartment complex, So I mean, the ones that do, they're a little more savvy. So you gotta definitely pick up your game when you're going to invest in apartments. But it's less people are looking for them. Also, value is based on profit. When profit goes up, value goes up. I mentioned that earlier already a couple times, but I love that. So my apartment complex, I bought it for $550,000. I got a great deal on it. And when I bought it, it was mostly empty. It was over half empty. And so I did all the work needed to fill the property up. I fixed up some units. I repainted it. I did a lot of work on it. And now it's worth a little over $900,000. And so I built that equity up. I built the value of the property up quite a bit just because I improved the profit. Now, how do you improve profit? Well, you could either decrease expenses or you could increase income, and I did both. Our average rents were around $475, and now they're right around $535. And so over time, just as the unit got nicer, as people moved out, we'd raise the rent a little bit to match what the other nice things in the area were, and it increased the value. Also, on those apartment complexes, management is assumed. In other words, like most people don't buy an apartment assuming they're going to go manage it themselves. The cost of management is just part of the deal. And so it can be one of the most hands-off investments you can buy as an apartment complex. And then finally, it's the most scalable. Honestly, you could buy a 100-unit or 200 or 500-unit property a lot faster than you can buy 200 or 500 single-family houses, right? So it's the most scalable option. Now, what kind of returns can you get? Again, I'll say it again, it depends on the deal you get and the leverage you use. It really does. But here's just an example. Let's just say you found a 24-unit property and you purchased it for $1.5 million. And you put a big 30% down payment, 33% down payment of $500,000, and you came up with $100,000 in repairs and closing costs. So it needed a lot of work, we'll say. So totally your investment in this property is $600,000. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, I don't have $600,000, and that's okay. There are cheaper apartment complexes out there. Like I said, I bought mine for $500,000, and I hardly put any of my own money into it. You don't have to necessarily put a huge down payment down if you learn how to invest creatively, and that's kind of what I spend a lot of my time talking and writing about. But so let's just say, though, you invested $600,000, and the total rent every month was $22,000. Total came in, and the total expenses that went out were $17,000. Which means at the end of the day, you were clearing right about $5,000 a month. After management, after taxes, insurance, vacancy, repairs, all that stuff, you were clearing $5,000 a month. Well, $5,000 a month times 12 months, looking at $60,000 per year. Now again, that simple calculation, 60,000 divided by 600 is a 10% cash-on-cash return. And that's with very, very passive. If I have to buy it, like your manager is just looking after it. Now, it's not completely passive. You got to make sure your manager is doing their job. You got to check the numbers and make sure that they're not stealing from you and things like that. But this is, again, 10% cash-on-cash return without the appreciation of the tax benefits or the loan pay down. Right? This can be a good return right now and a great return later on overall with your total return. I mean, for example, if you bought it, for that $1.5 million and you put in $100,000 in repairs, my guess is it's probably a lot more. It's worth a lot more now. You probably raise rent. Let's say you raised every one of those units, by $100 a month. That could bring an extra $2,400 a month in rent. Over the course of a year, you're looking at roughly $30,000, if I'm doing the math in my head right, roughly $30,000 a year in extra income. That could likely raise the value of that property up $500,000 or more. That's again how drastic it can be. When you raise the profit up, you can raise the value up quite a bit. So let's just say that that's what happened. You increased the value when you bought the property was $1.5 million, and immediately within a year, we'll say after you bought it, it's now worth $2 million. That's pretty awesome, right? So let's say you held that property for 5 years and then sold it. Not only were you getting cash flow every month for 5 years, you were making that 10% return. At the end of the day, you sold it and made an extra $500,000 in profit. And during that time, you paid down the loan as well. And so there's a lot of other reasons that you're going to get return out of those, again, the 4 wealth generators. Pretty awesome stuff there. All right, so how do you get started with apartment complexes? A little bit different than the other ways. I'd recommend, first of all, read the top 3 books. Read 3 of the top books on apartment complex investing. If you want a good one to start with, a very basic good one to start with, there's one by Ken McElroy called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, and also one called The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. They're both by Ken McElroy, McElroy. They're both pretty good. There's a really good one called Investing in Apartment Buildings or something like that by Steve Burgess, Berges, or is it Burges, something like that. Anyway, also an excellent book, a basic understanding of how apartments work. Next, learn how to properly evaluate an apartment complex deal. This is not as simple as just plugging in a couple numbers on a back of a napkin. It takes a little bit more work to figure out what an apartment complex is ultimately going to produce for you. And then start analyzing potential deals based on what is in your market or where you want to buy. You don't have to actually buy the deals, but start analyzing them. Start pretending. Start just doing the numbers and seeing, hey, I think that they're asking $1.7 million. I think I could pay $1.4 million, and that would make it worth it to me. And the more practice you get, the better you get at it. And also understand that apartments are a very hot investment right now. In fact, they're one of the best, most popular investments in the entire US right now. Investors, especially out-of-country investors, love apartment complexes. So the competition is heating up a little bit on them. And you really got to know what you're doing, because there's a lot of idiots out there buying deals that they're never going to make a return on. You got to be smarter than them. All right, before we get out of here, I want to talk about 5 mistakes that I've made in my investing career. Number 1, I try to do everything myself. From the beginning, I used to fix toilets. I used to do everything, and I never made any money at the beginning because I was doing everything myself. I was too busy working in my business than working on my investments. And so it was rough. I was managing it all at the beginning. I did all the repairs, and I analyzed properties as if I was going to do all the repairs forever, not realizing that someday I don't want to do them. I spent way too many days under houses and on top of properties, and I used my hands instead of my head. I tried to do everything myself. I was screening tenants, taking phone calls, doing everything. Today, I outsource almost everything, like I said. We'll talk about that in a minute. I didn't analyze the deal right. I mean, that was a major mistake at the beginning. I didn't account for property management. I didn't account for those big things like the capital expenditures, the big ticket occasional repairs. I didn't think about the time value of managing certain kinds of properties. In other words, when I was looking at a dumpy little 4-unit over in the worst part of town, I didn't really think about, that's going to take a lot more work. That's going to have more repairs. That's going to have more management headache, a lot more turnover, more eviction costs. It's going to have all those things that I'm going to have to account for. I didn't really think about the time value of managing certain types of properties. Number 3, in the beginning, I managed way too soft. In other words, I didn't say no. A few things. I rented to family and friends. Big mistake. It's my number 1 rule today, as I tell people, don't rent to family and friends no matter what. It never works out good. Somebody's getting screwed no matter what. It always ends up that way. You never keep the relationship. Number 2, I had a hard time enforcing rules at properties in the beginning. I used to be soft. Like they'd say, hey, my paycheck was late from work, and so I didn't get paid on time. Can I pay next week? I'd be like, okay, sure. And guess what? Next week they wouldn't pay. They'd have another excuse, and I'd be like, okay, sure. And before you know it, they're 3 months behind in rent, and really the whole time it was lies. Just lies over lies. I mean, there's a truth for you. Tenants lie all the time. It just happens all the time. I get lied to. And that's part of the business of being in real estate and managing properties. Now, today, I outsource a lot of that management, so I don't have to deal with the lies anymore. But I know they still lie to my managers now. All right, next, I let tenants get behind on rent. That's a big mistake. I mean, now today, I run our business, and I instruct our the management team to don't let tenants get behind on rent. Give them a 3-day notice to pay rent. And I know that sounds harsh, but they always pay. I'm doing them a favor by enforcing the rules. And I know that sounds really silly, but trust me, when they get behind on rent, they get farther and farther and farther, and pretty soon they're so far under, they either move out in the middle of the night because they're desperate and they don't know what to do, or they scramble, or I have to evict them, or something bad happens, right? So by enforcing the rules, it makes tenants get creative, and they figure out how to pay the rent, and they stay current. And I'm actually doing them a favor. I'm saving their credit, saving their future ability to get new properties by enforcing all the rules and being strict, being firm but fair. Number 4, I let emotion cause me to buy bad deals. I did that a lot. I let emotion cause me to buy bad deals. And so it just, I'd look at a property and say, oh, that looks so cute. I just really want that property. And they come back to me and they want a higher amount for it. Oh, that's okay. I could pay more. Emotion, it's bad. So remember, real estate is a numbers game. Don't let your excitement to buy a property take over. It's a numbers game. Stick with the number, because it's better to buy no deal than a bad deal. Don't buy a bad deal, and learn the math. Take the time needed to learn how to properly analyze a deal. And number 5 mistake, I bought properties just because they were cheap. Just remember that cheap does not mean a good deal. Zig Ziglar talks about price in one of his books. He talks about price versus cost. And you say, well, what's the difference? Well, price is the amount you pay for a property. Cost is how much you pay over time for a property. In other words, the price might be cheap on that dumpy house down the street in the bad neighborhood. The price might be cheap. The cost of owning that, though, is going to be high. Not just the value cost, like the monetary cost, but the mental cost and the anguish and the irritations of dealing with those properties. So understand that price is different than cost. Buy based on cost, not based on price. And buy for long-term enjoyment. Don't buy a property just because it's cheap. Buy because you want to own that property in 10 years from now, because you think it would be fun to own that property because it's going to get better over time. It's going to attract people you want to rent to. In fact, an investor once gave me a tip and said, I only rent to people that I would feel comfortable having over for dinner. Because he wanted it to be enjoyment for life. He didn't want to rent to people that he wouldn't want to be seen with in public because they might mug somebody, you know? So again, buy properties not because they're cheap, but buy them because they're valuable. All right. And then I know a lot of you guys are saying, but I don't want to fix toilets or I don't want to crawl under a house. And you know what? Good. You don't have to. Let plumbers do, and this took me a while to figure out, but let plumbers do what they do best. Let electricians do what they do best. Contractors do what they do best. Managers do what they do best. And let you do what you do best, and that is investing your money. So how to invest in real estate with minimal time, and this is the last section of this presentation. We're going to wrap up. Number one, you got to utilize other people. You got to utilize other people. You got to use your property manager. If you want to hire a professional property manager, that's great. Or hire someone that you know, like your spouse or a partner, to do the management. Or maybe hire an employee. In fact, I just hired my first full-time employee. I've been using a lot of part-time people over the years, but I just hired a full-time assistant that's going to help me with my real estate business because I want to utilize other people so I don't have to put in even the few hours that I do. I want to ramp up my investing. I want to buy a dozen properties this year maybe, but I don't want to do any more work for it. And I know that sounds like greedy, but that's just what it is. I don't want to do it. So I'm going to hire other people to do a lot of work for me. I'm working with a partner. My spouse does a lot of work on managing our properties. I'm going to use employees and it's going to be great. All right. Number two, buy good properties in good areas. Now, the danger of that, of course, is sometimes good properties in good areas are not deals. You're going to lose money on them. Don't buy those. But look for properties that are in good neighborhoods, not in ones that you'd be scared to go at during the daytime or at night. Like, again, there are investors who like to buy in all sorts of areas, but if you want a more passive investing, look for the better properties. Maybe look for a crappy property or that needs some work on it in a good area, because then you can improve it, and then it's a good property in a good area. But don't buy a crappy property in a crappy area. Next, buy fewer but better deals. You know, you don't need to go out and buy 50 properties your first year just to get some under your belt. You know, find what you want, set your criteria, and go buy something that's amazing that will last you for the next 20, 30, 50 years. Next, create repeatable, outsourceable systems. In other words, everything you do with real estate, think of it in terms of this is a system that I'm going to build, and I'm going to do it the same way every time, and I'm going to have a manual on how to do it or videos on how to do it, and then I'm going to have somebody else do it. That goes back up to that utilizing other people. But just think from the beginning, think in terms of systems and processes that you can eventually outsource. So if you could only, and this is a Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week thing, but he says, if you could only work 2 hours a day, and I'll say, or 2 hours a week, if you could only work 2 hours a week, what would you do with your business? I would challenge you, what if you could only work 2 hours a month? Build your business, your real estate business, in a way that you could work an hour a month or 2 hours a month on your business to make sure it's running well. And then even if you had to work more in it at the beginning, I understand that. It sometimes takes more work at the beginning, but build it as if that's your goal and build those systems. Next, consider turnkey real estate investing, but be careful. Now, what is turnkey? There are companies, a lot of them are in the Midwest, that will buy properties they'll buy the property, they'll fix it up, they'll put a tenant into it, and then they'll sell it to an out-of-area investor. And then they'll manage it. And so for the investor, it's almost completely hands-off. It's like, oh, I don't have to do anything. And so that can be a way to do it. You can consider turnkey investing, but just be careful because a lot of turnkey companies are terrible with the math. They fudge the numbers and they're like, oh yeah, there's no repairs on this property and there's no vacancy on this property ever. So make sure you run your own numbers. So be careful. Also, and I didn't put this on the slides, but I should mention it, there are a number of other really passive ways to invest in real estate. For example, you could put your money into a REIT, a real estate investment trust. It's kind of like a stock or a mutual fund, but they invest in big apartment complexes and shopping malls and things like that. I personally don't do it, so I'm not going to tell you a lot about it, but I know some people that's part of their strategy. Another option, though, today that's becoming more and more popular is a phenomenon, or maybe you want to call it, called crowdfunding, and crowdfunding for real estate. So what that means is this. There's companies out there, for example, like Realty Mogul is one of them, or Realty Shares is one of them. There's just two examples of ones that I know of, and realtyshares.com, realtymogul.com. You can go there and you can put your money in, let's say $50,000 into their fund, and then they go out and fund real estate deals. Like they might go buy a 50-unit apartment complex. And then there's different ways. There's dozens of these companies, these crowdfunders out there, and there's dozens of ways that they structure things. Sometimes they're just a loan. Sometimes you just make a flat certain percentage. Sometimes you get a piece of the deal. Sometimes it's a little of both. So just everyone's different. Look into that, but that can be a really passive way to invest as well. And it's kind of like turnkey, except for you don't actually own the property, but you can get a nice return. Just be a nice way to diversify your investments. And then finally, the last one I want to talk about is if you're managing yourself, if you're going to take care of the properties, train your tenants or your manager if you're going to have a manager, but train your tenants from day one. You have to train them just like a child. Just like you train a child when they're growing up, they don't know right from wrong. They don't know that they need to pay rent on time. They don't realize that if they pay rent late this month and next month and next month, eventually you're going to have to evict them. It's going to destroy their life. You got to train them. So you train them by being firm but fair. Don't let them get away with things. Have rules, have carefully outlined rules that are designed to help the tenant do exactly what they're supposed to do. All right, so wrapping up, what did we learn today? Well, we covered a lot of stuff today, right? We covered everything from the 3 strategies you should get into. We talked about the 4 wealth generators. We talked about how to do it more passively, some tips for doing that worked well in my life. And, hopefully you learn something from all this and learn from my mistakes that I've made. Of course, this is just an introduction to real estate investing. If you want to know more about it, you're going to have to jump in and read some books or listen to some podcasts or, just Google some terms like how do I buy a rental property or jump into a real estate forum and start asking questions. Take a local real estate investor out to lunch. That can be an incredible way to learn how to invest in your own area is you go bring a local investor out to lunch and just say, hey, can we connect for lunch? I'll buy you a nice steak dinner or something like that and learn from them what they're doing. Anyway, those are just a few ideas. Thank you for watching this presentation. If you enjoyed this, hopefully you come check me out on BiggerPockets.com. Come sign up for a free account there. You can learn more and just join the social network where we talk about more than politics and cat videos where we're talking about how to become more wealthy using real estate investing. And with that, my name is Brandon from BiggerPockets.com, and I will see you around.